Chapter 1 The Boy with the Screw. The first thing I remember clearly is electricity. Not a lot of people can say that. I was crawling around on the floor, maybe 2 years old or 3. Memory gets fuzzy that far back. I had a screw in my hand and I found a wall outlet. You already know where this is going. I shoved the screw in the outlet and got lit up like a Christmas decoration. I remember the tingling in my hand. Not pain exactly, more like every nerve in my hand suddenly raising its hand at once. Then something strange happened. The world snapped into focus. Chair, table, cup, fork, I knew what things were. Not just saw them, but recognized them. It was as if somebody had turned on a light switch inside my head. That was my first clear memory. Maybe it means something, maybe it doesn't. I've had 56 years to think about it and still haven't reached a final verdict. The funny thing is, though, it wasn't my first memory. It was my first memory with recognition. But before that, there were impressions, feelings, moments floating in the darkness without names attached to them. Like live photos with the sound turned off. I remember being in a playpen once. Not the room or the furniture. I don't even really know how old I was. I would say 1.5. I just remember the feeling, the rage, pure overwhelming rage. I remember pulling a handful of my own hair out of my head. The bald spot is still there. And for years I thought that anger belonged entirely to me. Now I'm not so sure. Looking back, I wonder how much of it belonged to the adults around me. Kids absorb things. Fear, love, stress, joy, anger. They breathe in emotional weather long before they understand what the weather is. I didn't know it back then. I just knew something felt too big for a little kid to hold. Back then, it was just me and my mom. The story of how we got there was complicated. The story of how we stayed together was even more so. Mom wasn't perfect. Neither was life, but she loved me. I've spent enough years looking back to know that that's what mattered most. When Mom loved somebody, she loved completely. Sometimes more than was wise. Sometimes more than they deserved. But she loved anyway. That was one of the greatest gifts she ever gave me. Not through lectures or through rules, just by example. Before South Dakota, before Washington, before karaoke, before Alaska, there was Modesto. I was barely out of diapers then. I remember riding a tricycle around the court where we lived. One of Mom's rivals was outside. I knew Mom didn't like her, so naturally, being a loyal little kid, I stuck my tongue out at her. The woman grabbed a wine bottle and started swinging it over her head, yelling like she stepped out of an old Western. Mom stepped in. The woman ended up with a broken arm. For years, I carried a strange guilt about that, like somehow I caused it. Looking back now, I can finally let that go. I was a little kid on a tricycle. What happened after belongs to the adults. That took me a long time to understand. Not long after, we were in South Dakota. Cold country, potato country. Mom worked at a potato factory. I remember going there once when she had to go pick up a check. I don't remember the building exactly, but I do remember the smell and the potatoes. That's how memory works sometimes. Doesn't save the whole movie. Just 1 cent and suddenly you're standing in another decade. The snow seemed taller than I was. We had a St. Bernard named Coors, big enough that I could ride him like a horse. And my stepfather bought me full hockey gear one year. Helmet, pads, stick, the whole setup. The only problem was nobody taught me how to skate. So there I was, dressed for the NFL, spending most of my time falling down. Looking back, that might have been training for adulthood. My stepfather wasn't one thing. Nobody is. He could buy me hockey gear. He raced stock cars. He tried, at least sometimes. He could also be cruel. Both are true. And one of the hardest lessons I learned is that truth rarely fits neatly into one pocket. He scared me in ways a child should never be scared. One time, he got in my face with a Big Bird doll, shaking it and yelling it until my little mind turned it into a monster. I swear that I saw it grow teeth. Not literally, at least I don't think literally, but fear has a special effects department all its own. He punished me in ways that left marks you couldn't always see. Long periods of forced stillness, silence, fear, things no child should have to carry. I don't excuse it, but I can see something now that I couldn't see then. While he was trying to break me, something else was happening. I was learning focus, concentration, the ability to sit with discomfort. Years later, those same skills would help me run sound, mix music, read rooms, and stay calm when everybody else is losing theirs. Life is strange that way. Sometimes people accidentally hand us tools while trying to hand us wounds. One day, he packed me a suitcase and kicked me out. I couldn't have been more than 3 years old. I grabbed the suitcase and started walking through the trailer park. People stopped me and asked, "Well, where are you going?" I told them, "I don't know." The strange thing is, I wasn't scared. I felt free. Felt like I could handle anything. Then I looked back and saw my mom was following me. She wasn't stopping me, she was following me. And suddenly I knew I could come home. Years later, I realized something. The reason I wasn't afraid wasn't because I was brave. It was because Mom was there. Eventually, he gave me a bloody nose. Mom left him after that, packed us up and moved us away. I didn't understand how difficult that must have been. Kids rarely do. All I knew was that Mom and I were together. That was enough. We lived near an army base for a while. I remember turning 4 there. Chinook helicopters would land nearby. One day, Mom was at work and I was home alone. The helicopters came thundering overhead, and for reasons only a terrified 4-year-old could explain, I became convinced they were coming to get me. I also remember swallowing a dime at that time. The moment it went down, I knew I'd done something stupid. I remember thinking, I could have died if it got stuck. That's another pattern in my life. Do something foolish, realize it immediately, try not to repeat it. I've had mixed success. Not everything was hard. That's important. Hard childhoods still come with sunlight. Mom and I had indoor water fights. Actual water fights. We'd run through our tiny apartment throwing cups of water at each other until the place looked like we had a plumbing emergency. We laughed until we couldn't breathe. I remember Mom sitting on a blanket in the park. The sun was shining. It was no special occasion, no grand event, just Mom sitting in the grass. The older I get, the more I understand why that memory stayed. For a little while, everything was okay. I remember her singing while she did the dishes, water running, plates clinking, her voice floating through the room. I do the same thing now. Didn't realize where I learned it until years later. That's how parents live inside us, not always through the big lessons, sometimes through a song at the sink. When I was 5 or 6, I stole a piece of banana candy from a store. One of the babysitter's kids told my mom. Mom spanked me and marched me all the way back to the store, made me pay for the candy, and then made me tell them exactly what I had done. Thank you, Mom. At that time, I probably disagreed. Today, I understand. She wasn't teaching me about candy. She was teaching me about accountability. If you make a mistake, own it. That lesson lasted longer than the candy did. Around that same age, I found a bottle of Elmer's glue at the store that I bought with money that Mom had given me while she was half asleep. Apparently, she had not intended to fund my glue-based scientific research. I had just discovered how fun it was to put glue on your hands, let it dry, and then peel it off. She was not amused. Another valuable lesson: always get permission from people when they're fully awake. One afternoon, I caught what felt like a 10-foot wave body surfing. It was probably 4 feet, maybe less, but to me, it was enormous. I managed to make my way to the top of the wave and ride it all the way in. On the walk home, I looked up and thought, wow, this is a really great day. I'm going to remember this day. More than 50 years later, I still do. I wasn't only watching for danger, I was watching for beauty too. Maybe that's what saved me. I was 11 years old, riding a bus across town, watching a circle of light float above rooftops. I didn't know it then, but that image would stay with me for the rest of my life. It was my first conscious sense of God.